Martha Jensen stared at the architectural drawings spread across her mahogany desk, the afternoon sun streaming through the bay windows of her Portland home office. At 62, with silver hair cropped in a practical bob, she still had the sharp eye that had made her one of Oregon's most respected residential architects before her retirement 3 years ago. The house on the plans wasn't just any project, it was meant to be her legacy, a gift for her only son, Kevin, and his wife, Elaine, a place where her future grandchildren would grow up, where family traditions would take root. Martha had purchased the land on the outskirts of Portland 5 years ago, a beautiful 2-acre lot with views of Mount Hood on clear days. "Mum, you're doing too much," Kevin had protested when she first mentioned the project. But Martha could see the hope in his eyes. At 34, Kevin and Elaine had been saving for years, but Portland's housing market remained stubbornly out of reach for the high school teacher and nurse. Martha's pencil hovered over the kitchen layout. She'd spent weeks perfecting it, an open concept design with an island large enough for family gatherings, windows positioned to capture the morning light, and a cozy breakfast nook where she imagined herself having coffee with her grandchildren someday. Her phone buzzed with a text from Kevin, coming by with Elaine to discuss house plans. "She has some ideas," Martha smiled. She welcomed input. This would be their home, after all. She'd left several aspects of the design flexible, expecting they might want to personalize certain spaces. The doorbell rang precisely at 4. Martha opened the door to find Kevin, tall and lanky like his late father, and Elaine, her auburn hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, her expression unreadable behind oversized sunglasses. Come in," Martha ushered them inside. "I've just made some iced tea." In the living room, Kevin immediately gravitated toward the architectural drawings. "Wow, Mom, these are incredible." Martha beamed with pride. "I've incorporated everything we discussed. The home office for you, Kevin, the extra-large garden for Elaine's vegetables, and—" "Actually," Elaine interrupted, finally removing her sunglasses, "we need to talk about the plans." There was something in her tone that made Martha pause. In the 4 years since Kevin had married Elaine, Martha had tried to respect boundaries. She'd never been the meddling type, had deliberately given the newlyweds space to build their own life together. "Of course," Martha replied carefully. "What would you like to discuss?" Elaine pulled out her phone and showed Martha a Pinterest board filled with sleek, modern interiors, all whites and greys, minimalist furniture and industrial fixtures. "This is more what we had in mind. Your design is very traditional." "I see," Martha said, taking the phone. The style was the opposite of the warm, craftsman-inspired home she'd designed. "I can certainly incorporate some modern elements." "And about this little suite you've included off the kitchen," Elaine continued, pointing to Martha's carefully designed grandmother apartment. "We really don't need that." Martha felt her throat tighten. "I thought it would be nice for when I visit, or if you ever need help with children." "Martha," Elaine cut in, using her first name as she always did, never Mom, like Kevin had suggested early in their marriage. "I think we need to be clear about expectations. We appreciate the house, it's incredibly generous. But Kevin and I need our own space to build our family." Kevin shifted uncomfortably. "What Elaine means is—" "What I mean," Elaine continued firmly, "is that we don't want you designing yourself into our daily lives. I know how these things go. The grandmother suite becomes a permanent residence, and suddenly you're offering opinions on how we raise our children, how I keep house." Martha felt as if she'd been slapped. "That was never my intention." "Intentions aren't the point," Elaine said. "Boundaries are. We need you to stay in your corner, Martha. We'll visit for Sunday dinners, holidays, but this house needs to be ours." Kevin placed a hand on Martha's shoulder. "Mum, what Elaine's saying—" "I understand perfectly," Martha interrupted, years of professional composure coming to her rescue. She straightened her back and looked Elaine directly in the eyes. "This is your home. I'll make the changes." After they left, Martha sat alone at her desk, the golden afternoon light fading to blue dusk. She traced her fingers over the grandmother's suite she'd designed with such care, the reading nook where she'd imagined sharing stories with grandchildren, the small kitchenette where she wouldn't have to intrude on the main family space. "Stay in your corner," Elaine had said. The words echoed painfully. Martha picked up her pencil and began to make adjustments to the blueprint. But as the night deepened, something shifted in her. She'd spent her career fulfilling other people's visions of home. Perhaps it was time to create something for herself. She pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began to draw. Not modifications to her original plan, but something entirely new. If they wanted her to stay in her corner, she would, but it would be a corner of her own design. Martha worked through the night, her architect's mind alive with possibilities. By morning, when the first light touched Mount Hood in the distance, she had the beginnings of a new blueprint, not just for a house, but for the next chapter of her life. The construction site buzzed with activity as Martha pulled her Subaru alongside the foreman's truck. 3 months had passed since that painful conversation with Elaine, and in that time, Martha had completely reimagined the project. She'd presented Kevin and Elaine with the modified plans, a sleek, modern design with no grandmother suite, and they'd approved enthusiastically, particularly Elaine, whose smile held a hint of triumph. What they didn't know was that Martha had set another plan in motion. "Morning, Mrs. Jensen," called Marco, the construction foreman, tipping his hard hat. At 58, he was one of the few contractors who'd worked with Martha throughout her career and respected her expertise without question. "How are we looking on the foundation, Marco?" Martha asked, pulling on her own hard hat and work boots from the trunk. "Exactly as you specified," Marco replied with a knowing glance. The modifications are being implemented seamlessly." Martha nodded, feeling a mixture of guilt and exhilaration. The modifications were subtle but significant. An expanded basement with separate entrance and rough-ins for plumbing that didn't appear on the plans Kevin and Elaine had approved. Nothing that changed the modern aesthetic of the house, but preparations for possibilities they hadn't considered. "Mrs. Jensen!" a familiar voice called from across the site. Martha turned to see Elaine approaching, dressed impeccably in designer jeans and a crisp white blouse, hardly appropriate for a dusty construction site. "Elaine, what a surprise," Martha said, quickly gesturing for Marco to continue with the crew. "I thought you were working today." "Switched shifts," Elaine replied, surveying the site with a critical eye. "Wanted to see how our house is coming along." Her emphasis on "our" wasn't lost on Martha. "The foundation is almost complete," Martha explained, leading Elaine toward the safer viewing area. "They'll start framing next week. And you're here because—" Elaine let the question hang in the air. Martha maintained her professional composure. "Just consulting with the foreman on some technical aspects. I am the architect of record, after all." Elaine's eyes narrowed slightly. "I thought we discussed this. Kevin and I appreciate your gift, but we need to make this home our own." "Of course," Martha replied evenly. "I'm only ensuring the structure is sound. Once the building is complete, the space is entirely yours to decorate and inhabit as you wish." Elaine seemed to relax marginally. "Good, because Kevin and I have been working with an interior designer. We're thinking concrete floors throughout, not the hardwood you specified." Martha bit back her objection. Hardwood would be warmer, more practical with children, and simply nodded. "Your choice entirely. And we're considering removing that reading alcove in the living room," Elaine continued. "It breaks up the clean lines we're going for." The reading alcove had been Kevin's request, a reminder of his childhood home where he'd spent hours lost in books. Martha wondered if he'd actually agreed to its removal. "I should get back to the hospital," Elaine said, checking her watch. "Just wanted to make sure everything's on track." After Elaine left, Martha exhaled slowly and walked back to where Marco was overseeing the concrete pour for the foundation. "Everything okay?" he asked, noting her expression. "Just family dynamics," Martha replied. "Nothing as straightforward as concrete and steel." Marco chuckled. "That's why I stick to building houses, not navigating the relationships inside them." That evening, Martha sat at her kitchen table with her old friend Diana. a glass of Pinot Noir in hand. Diana had been her first client 30 years ago, and they'd remained close through marriages, Diana's divorce, children, and now grandchildren. "So, you're really going through with this?" Diana asked, eyebrow raised. "Creating a secret apartment within their house without telling them?" "Not secret," Martha corrected. "Just unanticipated. The basement will have all the necessary infrastructure. If they ever decide they want to finish it as an apartment, for a caregiver, aging parent, or even rental income, it'll be ready. And if they don't?" Martha sipped her wine. "Then it remains unfinished storage space. No harm done." Diana looked skeptical. "Except you've spent an extra $40,000 on preparations for something they've explicitly said they don't want." "I'm not imposing myself on them," Martha insisted. "I'm just creating possibilities." "Martha," Diana said gently, "I've known you too long. This isn't just about architectural foresight. You're hurt." Martha stared into her wine glass, watching the light refract through the ruby liquid. "You know what Kevin said to me yesterday? He called to ask if I thought they should opt for the more expensive windows. He said, 'Mom, we want this house to last generations.'" "Generations, Diana. But apparently those generations don't include me." Diana reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Have you considered that maybe this isn't about you? That maybe Elaine has her own reasons for wanting boundaries?" "Like what?" Martha asked defensively. "I don't know her well," Diana admitted. "But sometimes young couples, especially women, feel overwhelmed by their in-laws' expectations. Maybe she's trying to establish her own identity as the woman of the house." Martha hadn't considered this perspective, "but I've never interfered. I've always been careful to give them space." "Intent and impact are different things," Diana pointed out. "Perhaps instead of secretly changing the blueprints, you should try to understand Elaine better." The next day, Martha found herself parked outside Portland General Hospital during lunch hour. She spotted Elaine in her scrubs, sitting alone at an outdoor table, focused on her phone. "Mind if I join you?" Martha asked, approaching with 2 coffee cups from Elaine's favorite cafe. Surprise flashed across Elaine's face, followed by wariness. "Martha, what brings you here?" Martha set down the coffee. "Peace offering, and a desire to understand better what you and Kevin want for your home." Elaine accepted the coffee cautiously. "I thought I'd been clear." "About the design, yes," Martha acknowledged. "But I realize I don't know much about your vision for your family life. What kind of home did you grow up in, Elaine?" The question seemed to catch Elaine off guard. She took a sip of coffee before answering. "Why does that matter?" "Because homes shape us," Martha replied simply. "As an architect, I've learned that people's strongest reactions to spaces often connect to their past experiences." Something in Elaine's expression shifted. "I grew up in apartments, 6 different ones by the time I was 16. My mother was always chasing better opportunities, which meant we were always moving." "That must have been challenging," Martha said, genuinely interested. "It was normal for me," Elaine shrugged, but her voice softened. "But I never had roots, never had a place that felt permanent. That's what I want for our children, stability, permanence." Martha nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "And having me too involved feels like a threat to that stability." Elaine met Martha's eyes directly. "Having anyone else's vision imposed feels threatening. This house, it's the first thing that will truly be ours. Not rented, not temporary, not someone else's dream." As Martha drove home, she reflected on their conversation. The blueprint changes she'd ordered suddenly felt less like a justified modification, and more like exactly what Elaine feared. Someone else's vision being imposed. Martha pulled into her driveway and sat there, engine off, thinking. She had always prided herself on designing homes that served her clients' needs, not her own aesthetic preferences. Somewhere along the way, with this house for Kevin and Elaine, she'd lost that objectivity. She picked up her phone and called Marco. "We need to talk about those basement modifications," she said. "I've had a change of heart." Martha surveyed the framed structure of the house, now taking clear shape against the Oregon sky. 6 weeks had passed since her lunch with Elaine, and the conversation had prompted a significant shift in Martha's approach. After calling Marco that day, She'd scaled back most of the secret basement preparations, keeping only the most practical elements that any homeowner might appreciate: proper waterproofing, sufficient ceiling height, and strategically placed support columns that wouldn't impede future use of the space. "It's looking good," Kevin said, standing beside her at the site. He'd taken the afternoon off from teaching to check on the progress, something he'd been doing more frequently as the house became tangible. "It is," Martha agreed, feeling a complex mix of emotions. The house was beautiful, even in this skeletal state. The dramatic roofline, the walls of windows facing the mountain view, the thoughtful flow from space to space. It would be a striking home, though not the one she'd originally envisioned. "Elaine mentioned you two had lunch," Kevin said carefully. "She seemed different afterward." Martha glanced at her son. "Different how?" Kevin shrugged. "Less defensive about the house, I guess. She actually suggested we incorporate some built-ins for books in the living room again." He hesitated. "What did you say to her?" "I just listened," Martha replied honestly. "Sometimes that's the most important thing an architect can do, understand what home means to the person who will live there." Kevin nodded, looking thoughtful. "You know, when Dad died and you threw yourself into your work, I used to worry you were using other people's houses to avoid dealing with our empty one." The observation struck Martha with unexpected force. Richard had been gone 7 years now, a sudden heart attack at 58 that had left her adrift. Kevin was right. She'd accepted every commission offered, spending more time in clients' spaces than her own. "Maybe I was," she admitted. "Designing spaces for other families' futures was easier than reimagining my own." Kevin's hand found her shoulder. "Is that what this house is about? Creating a space for yourself in my future family?" Martha took a deep breath. "Initially, perhaps, but I'm trying to step back now. This is your and Elaine's home, not an extension of mine." "Mom," Kevin said, his voice gentle, "stepping back doesn't mean disappearing. You know that, right? We want you in our lives, just not—" "Designing myself into your daily routine?" Martha offered with a small smile. "Something like that." As they walked through the framed rooms, Martha pointed out features and explained decisions: the extra insulation for energy efficiency, the placement of windows to maximize natural light while minimizing heat gain, the subtle ways the house would embrace both mountain views and garden spaces. In what would become the main bedroom, Kevin paused. "Elaine and I have been talking," he said, looking out through the empty window frame toward Mount Hood. "We're going to start trying for a baby once the house is finished." Martha's heart swelled. "That's wonderful news." "Yeah," Kevin smiled, a mix of excitement and nervousness on his face. "We've been waiting until we felt settled. This house, it makes it seem possible now." Martha nodded, understanding the weight of his words. A home provided more than shelter. It created a foundation for life's biggest decisions. "There's something else," Kevin continued. "We've been discussing the basement." Martha tensed slightly. "Oh?" "Elaine suggested we might eventually finish part of it as a guest suite. Not right away, but down the road. She thought it might be good for when her mom visits from Arizona, or for you, if you wanted to stay over sometimes." Martha kept her expression neutral, despite the surge of vindication. "That would be practical. The basement has good bones for conversion." Kevin gave her a knowing look. "You already made sure of that, didn't you?" "Marco mentioned something about extra waterproofing and higher ceilings than standard." "Caught," Martha shrugged. "Just good building practice." "Uh-huh," Kevin chuckled. "Some things never change." That evening, Martha received an unexpected text from Elaine. "Can we meet at the coffee shop near the hospital tomorrow? There's something I'd like to discuss about the house." Martha's stomach tightened with apprehension. Had Elaine discovered more of the modifications she'd initially planned? Though she'd cancelled most of them, perhaps Marco's crew had implemented something she'd forgotten to remove from the plans. The next day, Martha arrived early at the coffee shop, choosing a quiet corner table. Elaine walked in precisely on time, her hospital ID still clipped to her scrubs. She looked tired after what had likely been a long shift. "Thanks for meeting me," Elaine said. settling into the chair opposite Martha after ordering a latte. "Of course," Martha replied. "Is everything all right with the house?" Elaine wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "Actually, I wanted to talk about the kitchen design." Martha blinked in surprise. "The kitchen? I thought that was finalized months ago." "It was," Elaine acknowledged. "But I've been thinking about what you said about homes shaping us." She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. "My grandmother had this kitchen in El Paso. Nothing fancy, just a small house in an ordinary neighborhood. But that kitchen, it was the heart of everything." Martha listened, intrigued by this unexpected opening. "Every Sunday, the whole family would crowd in. Grandmother at the stove, aunts and cousins chopping and talking. My job was to press the tortillas." A nostalgic smile softened Elaine's usually composed features. "Those are the only memories I have of true family stability before we started moving around." "It sounds wonderful," Martha said sincerely. "The kitchen we designed, it's beautiful, modern, efficient, but it's not," Elaine hesitated. "Not a place where family gathers to make tortillas?" Martha suggested gently. Elaine nodded. "Exactly. I've been so focused on creating something different from my childhood that I almost designed out the best part of it." Martha felt a surge of professional excitement. This was the part of architecture she loved most, uncovering the emotional connections people had to spaces. "What would you change? The island is too sleek, too minimal. My grandmother had this big wooden table in the middle of her kitchen where everyone could work, and there's no space for kids to be involved without being in the way." Martha pulled out her tablet and opened the kitchen plans. "Show me what you're thinking." For the next hour, they redesigned the kitchen together. Martha sketched as Elaine described, a larger, more rustic island with space for bar stools on one side and cooking workspace on the other, open shelving for everyday dishes, a dedicated lower cabinet where future children could access their own plates and cups. "What about a built-in step stool here?" Martha suggested, indicating a space near the main counter. "It could slide out for little helpers and tuck away when not needed." Elaine's eyes lit up. "My grandmother had a wooden crate we'd stand on. This is much better." As they worked, Martha noticed the barriers between them softening. This wasn't the guarded Elaine who'd told her to stay in her corner. This was a woman sharing meaningful childhood memories and imagining how to create new ones for her own future family. "Kevin mentioned you're planning to try for a baby," Martha said carefully as they finished their redesign. Elaine nodded, a mixture of excitement and vulnerability crossing her face. "Once the house is ready, I want everything to be perfect." "Perfect is overrated," Martha said gently. "Homes evolve with the families inside them. The best ones adapt and grow." Elaine studied her for a moment. "Is that why you kept changing your own house all those years? Kevin told me you were always redesigning something." The question caught Martha off guard. "I suppose I was trying to make the house evolve with us, especially after Richard died. It never felt quite right anymore." "But you stayed," Elaine observed. "I stayed," Martha confirmed. "The memories were worth more than perfect spaces." As they gathered their things to leave, Elaine hesitated. "There's one more thing. The reading alcove in the living room. I told you we wanted to remove it." "I remember," Martha said neutrally. "Kevin was upset about that. He didn't say anything to you, but he told me how much it reminded him of your old house." Elaine met Martha's eyes directly. "We're keeping it. Some things should be preserved, even in a new beginning." Walking to her car, Martha felt a weight lifting. The house taking shape on the outskirts of Portland wasn't the one she'd initially designed in her head, the one with her woven seamlessly into the family's daily life. But perhaps it was becoming something better, a true reflection of both Kevin's past and Elaine's, with space for them to create their own family traditions. That night, Martha opened her laptop and began sketching ideas for her own home. Not modifications to the house she'd shared with Richard, but something entirely new. Perhaps it was time for her own fresh start, nearby but separate from Kevin and Elaine's new beginning, a corner of her own choosing, not one she'd been relegated to. The autumn rains had set in, turning the construction site into a challenge of mud management and waterproof tarps. Martha stood under her umbrella, watching as the roofing crew worked through a brief break in the downpour to finish sealing the house against the elements. Despite the weather delays, the project remained largely on schedule, with drywall scheduled to begin the following week. "We should be dried in by tonight," Marco reported, joining her under the site tent where the plans were spread out, weighted down with stones at the corners. "Just in time, according to the forecast." Martha nodded, studying the latest weather radar on her phone. "Another system moving in tomorrow. The crew did good work pushing through today." "Your revised kitchen plans came through," Marco said, pulling out a rolled set of drawings. "Quite a change from the original design." Martha smiled slightly. "Sometimes the best architecture happens when you throw away the first draft." "Speaking of changes," Marco lowered his voice, "that special wiring configuration you asked for in the upstairs office, it's complete. No one would notice unless they knew what to look for." Martha felt a twinge of guilt. After scaling back most of her secret modifications, she'd kept just one: additional power and data infrastructure in what would be Kevin's home office, designed to easily support a high-end security system and smart home features. It wasn't that different from what many new builds included, just more robust and adaptable. She told herself it was practical foresight, not interference. "Thank you, Marco. That should—" Martha stopped mid-sentence as a familiar car pulled up. "That's Elaine's car. She doesn't usually come by on Thursdays." Something about Elaine's hurried exit from the vehicle sent up warning flags. Her normally perfect posture was hunched, and even from a distance, Martha could see she'd been crying. "I should check on her," Martha said, already moving toward the car, her heart racing with sudden concern. Elaine spotted her approach and quickly wiped at her eyes, straightening her shoulders in that characteristic way Martha had come to recognize as her armor going up. "Elaine, is everything all right?" Martha asked, holding her umbrella over both of them. "Fine," Elaine said automatically, then shook her head. "No, not really. I needed to see the house." Martha studied her daughter-in-law's face. "Let's sit in my car where it's dry. The crew's about to break for lunch anyway." In the privacy of Martha's Subaru, with rain drumming steadily on the roof, Elaine stared silently through the windshield at the house for several long moments. "Kevin and I had a fight," she finally said, her voice tight. "A bad one." Martha's stomach clenched. "About the house?" "No, about—" Elaine's composure cracked slightly. "About children, about trying for a baby." Martha waited, giving Elaine space to continue at her own pace. "We've been talking about starting a family for years," Elaine said, "always with the same timeline. First stability, then a house, then children. The plan was always so clear." She took a shaky breath. "I went to my annual checkup last week. Just routine, except it wasn't routine at all." Martha felt a cold dread settling in her chest. "Elaine, are you ill?" "No, nothing like that," Elaine quickly clarified. "But the doctor found severe endometriosis. She said—" her voice caught. "She said if we want children, we shouldn't wait. That it might already be difficult and it will only get harder." "Oh, Elaine," Martha said softly, "I told Kevin last night that we should start trying immediately, not wait for the house to be finished. And he just—" Elaine's hands clenched in her lap. "He said he wasn't ready yet, that he needed everything to be settled first." The pain in Elaine's voice was palpable. Martha chose her next words carefully. "Kevin has always been cautious. Even as a child, he needed to feel secure before taking any leap." "This isn't about security," Elaine said sharply. "This is about having children at all. The doctor made it very clear that time is not on our side." Martha nodded, understanding the stakes. "What did you say to him?" "I accused him of not really wanting children, of using the house as an excuse." Elaine looked down at her hands. "I said some things I shouldn't have. Then I walked out and spent the night at a friend's place." Rain streaked down the windows, blurring the house's silhouette. Martha thought about her son, his methodical nature, his need for plans and preparation. She also thought about what she knew of Elaine now, her childhood of impermanence, her deep desire for family roots. "Have you spoken to him today?" Martha asked. Elaine shook her head. "He's called and texted, but I couldn't talk to him yet. I came here instead." She looked at the house, its frame now fully enclosed, windows installed, roof nearly complete. "I keep thinking that this was supposed to be the beginning of everything. Now it feels like an obstacle." Martha considered her next words carefully. "The house was never the real foundation, Elaine. It's just a structure. The family you and Kevin build, that's the true foundation." Elaine turned to look at her, really look at her, perhaps for the first time. "How did you do it? Raise Kevin, build your career, maintain your marriage. How did you balance it all?" The question caught Martha off guard. In all their interactions, Elaine had never shown interest in Martha's experience as a mother or professional. "Imperfectly," Martha admitted with a small smile. "There were many times I felt like I was failing at everything. Richard was an incredible partner which made a world of difference. And we had help. My mother lived with us until Kevin was 5. "You did?" Elaine looked surprised. "Kevin never mentioned that. He probably doesn't remember it clearly. She had her own apartment in our basement." Martha stopped, the irony of this revelation suddenly striking her. Elaine caught it too. "So, you wanted to recreate your own living arrangement. That's why you initially designed that grandmother suite." Martha nodded, slightly embarrassed. "I suppose I did without fully realizing it. My mother's presence was so valuable when Kevin was young. She gave us flexibility with our careers, and Kevin adored her." She paused. "But every family finds their own way, Elaine. What worked for us might not be right for you and Kevin." Elaine was quiet for a moment, processing this. "I never had extended family around. My mother raised me alone, and we were always moving for her job. I guess I never saw how that kind of support could work without interference." "There's a difference between support and interference," Martha said gently, "though I'll admit the line can blur sometimes." They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching the roofers finish securing the last section of weatherproofing. "I should call Kevin," Elaine finally said. "You should," Martha agreed. "And Elaine, for what it's worth, I think you'll be a wonderful mother whenever and however that happens." Elaine's eyes filled with tears again, but she nodded gratefully. After Elaine left, Martha remained in her car, thinking about the conversation. She pulled out her phone and called her son. "Mom?" Kevin answered immediately, his voice tense. "Have you heard from Elaine?" "She's not answering my calls. She just left the construction site," Martha told him. "She's going to call you, Kevin. She told me about the doctor's appointment." Kevin was silent for a moment. "I messed up, Mom. When she told me, I just froze. All I could think about was that nothing was ready. Not the house, not my career, not our savings." "Some things can't wait for perfect timing," Martha said. "Life rarely follows blueprints, you know." "I know," Kevin sighed. "I just wanted everything to be ideal for our children, better than what we had." Martha felt a pang at his words. "What we had was pretty good, Kevin." "That's not what I meant," he quickly clarified. I remember how hard you worked, how tired you always were, trying to juggle everything. I don't want Elaine to have to struggle like that." Martha had never realized Kevin had noticed her exhaustion during those early years of motherhood and career building. "Every parent struggles, Kevin, but you support each other through it. That's what makes a family work." "What if I'm not ready?" he asked, vulnerability clear in his voice. "No one's ever truly ready," Martha said with a gentle laugh. "You just do your best, learn as you go, and love fiercely through all of it." After ending the call with Kevin, Martha drove to the property she'd been quietly considering for the past month, a small lot just 10 minutes from Kevin and Elaine's future home. It wasn't large or particularly special, but it had good southern exposure and enough space for the modest house she'd been sketching for herself. Standing in the drizzling rain, Martha could visualize her design taking shape on this land. A compact, efficient home with a studio where she could take on occasional consulting work, a garden large enough to be satisfying but not overwhelming, and perhaps most importantly, a comfortable guest room where grandchildren could stay overnight. Not living in their corner, but close enough to help when needed and invited. That evening, Martha was surprised by a knock at her door. She opened it to find both Kevin and Elaine standing on her porch. "Can we come in?" Kevin asked. "We need your help with something." They settled in Martha's living room, where Kevin spread out the house plans on the coffee table. "We've been talking," he began, "about what Elaine's doctor said, and about what matters most right now." Elaine picked up the thread. "We're going to start trying for a baby right away, not waiting for the house to be perfect." "I think that's wise," Martha said carefully. "But that means we need to reconsider some aspects of the house," Kevin continued. "If everything goes well, we could have a baby before the house is even finished." Martha nodded, her architect's mind already considering the implications. "What changes are you thinking about?" Elaine and Kevin exchanged a look before Elaine spoke. "We've been reconsidering the basement space. If we're going to have a child sooner rather than later, we might need help." She took a deep breath. "We'd like to finish part of the basement as a small apartment, not for you to live in permanently," she added quickly, "but as a space where you, or my mother when she visits, could stay comfortably while helping with the baby." Martha worked to keep her expression neutral, though her heart leapt. "That sounds practical. The basement already has the appropriate infrastructure for conversion." And Kevin gave her a knowing look. "Yes, we figured as much. Marco mentioned you'd ensured that, despite the changes to the plans." "Caught," Martha simply shrugged. "An architect's foresight." "Martha," Elaine said, using her first name as always, but with a new warmth, "I want to apologize for telling you to stay in your corner. That was unnecessarily harsh." "You were protecting your space," Martha acknowledged. "I understand that better now." "Still," Elaine continued, "families shouldn't be relegated to corners. They should be woven into the fabric of our lives, with healthy boundaries, of course." Martha smiled, feeling a sense of hard-won understanding between them. "I couldn't have designed it better myself." Spring had transformed the property, the mud giving way to fresh grass and wildflowers around the construction site. The house, now fully enclosed with windows installed and exterior siding nearly complete, looked less like a project and more like a home with each passing day. Inside, the once open framing was now defined by drywall, with painters moving methodically through the rooms, bringing Elaine and Kevin's vision to life in carefully chosen shades of warm whites and subtle greys. Martha walked through the spaces, making notes on her tablet for the final punch list. It had been 4 months since Kevin and Elaine had decided to try for a baby, and 2 months since Elaine had shared the joyful news that they were expecting. The pregnancy had shifted priorities and accelerated timelines, with move-in now scheduled for just 6 weeks away, leaving the crew rushing to complete the finishing touches. "The tile installation in the master bathroom starts tomorrow," Marco informed her, joining her in what would become the nursery. "And the custom kitchen cabinets arrived this morning. They're staging them in the garage." "Any issues with the basement apartment modifications?" Martha asked, scrolling through her checklist. "On schedule," Marco confirmed. "The separate HVAC system is installed and the plumber finished the bathroom rough-ins yesterday. It won't be completely finished by move-in, but it'll be functional enough for temporary stays." Martha nodded, satisfied. The basement apartment had evolved from her original secret plan to a collaborative design that would serve as occasional accommodation for extended family, particularly in the early months after the baby's arrival. Elaine's mother was already planning a 6-week stay once the baby was born in November. "Martha!" Elaine's voice called from downstairs. "Are you up there?" "In the nursery," Martha called back. Elaine appeared in the doorway moments later, her pregnancy now visible in the gentle curve beneath her loose blouse. At 5 months along, she had an energy and glow that transformed her usually reserved demeanor. "The painters finished the living room," she announced. "Come see if the color works with the natural light like you predicted." Mau. As they descended the stairs together, Martha noticed how Elaine instinctively held the railing. a feature Martha had insisted on despite it not being in the original modern design. Safety modifications had quietly made their way into the house plans over the past months, from rounded corners on the kitchen island to additional lighting in hallways and stairwells. In the living room, sunlight poured through the wall of windows, illuminating the freshly painted walls in a soft, warm white that contrasted beautifully with the dark frames of the windows and the reading alcove that had been preserved in the final design. "It's perfect," Elaine said, studying how the light played on the walls. "You were right about this shade, having enough warmth without looking yellow. It'll work well with the wood tones you've chosen for the furniture," Martha agreed. "Speaking of which, has the delivery date been confirmed for the living room pieces?" Elaine's expression shifted slightly. "That's actually something I wanted to talk to you about. Kevin and I have been reconsidering some of our furniture selections." Martha raised an eyebrow. "Oh? The pieces we chose are beautiful, but—" Elaine ran a hand over her growing belly. "After spending time with my mom last month, looking through old family photos, I've been thinking about comfort and practicality. Those sleek sofas we ordered look amazing in the catalogue, but I can't imagine nursing a baby on them or having a toddler climb up for story time." Martha suppressed a smile. This was a conversation she'd carefully avoided initiating, knowing it needed to come from Elaine herself. "What are you thinking instead?" she asked. "Something more like the sectional in your living room, actually," Elaine admitted with a small laugh. "I've always found it so comfortable when we visit. And it's held up for what? 15 years? 17, Martha corrected. Good bones and quality upholstery make all the difference. The key is finding pieces that balance aesthetics with livability." They moved into the kitchen, where workers were unpacking cabinet components. The redesigned space now featured the larger, more functional island Elaine had envisioned, with space for family cooking and casual dining, along with the clever built-in step stool for future little helpers. "Kevin's bringing lunch for the crew," Elaine mentioned, checking her watch. "He should be here soon. He wanted to talk to you about the office wiring." Martha felt a flicker of concern. "The office wiring?" Elaine nodded. "He was up there with the electrician yesterday. Something about additional capacity that wasn't in the original plans." Before Martha could formulate a response, Kevin's voice echoed through the house. "Food delivery! I've got sandwiches from Lovejoy Bakers for everyone." As the construction crew gravitated toward the makeshift break area outside, Kevin found Martha and Elaine in the kitchen. He kissed Elaine's cheek and handed her a paper bag. "Roasted vegetable and goat cheese on whole grain, as requested by mother and child." "How was the department meeting?" Elaine asked, opening the bag. "Productive. They approved my reduced teaching load for spring semester," Kevin replied, then turned to Martha. "Mom, do you have a minute to look at something in the office?" Martha followed Kevin upstairs, preparing her explanation for the enhanced wiring she'd quietly implemented. In the office, Kevin closed the door behind them. "So," he began, "the electrician pointed out some interesting features in here. Extra outlets with built-in USB ports, pre-wiring for ceiling-mounted projector, data lines that could support an enterprise-grade network." He raised an eyebrow. "Care to explain?" Martha sighed. "I may have upgraded the infrastructure a bit." "A bit?" Kevin repeated. "Mom, this is set up like a professional home office. You work from home 3 days a week," Martha pointed out. "I thought you might appreciate the flexibility." Kevin studied her for a moment. "Is this the last of your secret modifications? Or should I be looking for hidden passages and secret rooms too?" Despite his teasing tone, Martha felt a twinge of guilt. "Just this and the basement preparation, I promise. Old habits die hard." Kevin shook his head, but he was smiling. "You know, the funny thing is, I was going to ask for exactly these kinds of upgrades next week. The school is expanding their remote learning program, and they've asked me to develop curriculum. This setup is perfect." Martha blinked in surprise. "So you're not upset about getting exactly what I need before I even asked?" Kevin laughed. "It's annoying how right you can be sometimes, but no, I'm not upset. His expression grew more serious. "But Mom, you don't have to sneak things into our house. You could have just suggested it." "I know," Martha acknowledged. "I'm still learning where the line is between helpful foresight and overstepping." Kevin's face softened. "We all are. Speaking of which, there's something else Elaine and I want to discuss with you." They rejoined Elaine in the kitchen, where she was chatting with the cabinet installer about handle placement. When she finished, Kevin gestured toward the backyard. "Should we show Mom the latest adjustment to the plans?" Elaine nodded, leading the way through the sliding glass doors to the spacious backyard. The landscaping was still mostly dirt with marking flags, but Martha could see the outline of what would become garden beds, a patio, and play area. "We've been thinking about the property line," Kevin began, pointing to the far corner of the yard. "That section there, it's almost a quarter acre that's technically part of our lot, but it's separated by that natural drainage swale." Martha nodded, familiar with the topography. The house sat on the prime section of the 2-acre property, with a natural depression creating a subtle boundary between the main yard and a wooded corner lot. "We were wondering," Elaine continued, "if it might be possible to subdivide the property and create a separate building lot there." Martha looked at them in confusion. "Are you thinking of selling part of the land?" Kevin and Elaine exchanged glances before Kevin spoke. "Not selling. We thought maybe you might want it." The suggestion caught Martha completely by surprise. "Me? We know you've been looking at property not far from here," Elaine explained. "Kevin saw the real estate listings on your tablet last month. That lot you were considering is overpriced and has drainage issues," Kevin added. "The soil report was concerning." Martha stared at them, processing this unexpected development. "You're offering me part of your land to build on?" "If you want it," Elaine said. "It would give you your own space, your own home, but close enough to be part of our daily lives, especially once the baby comes. We'd create an easement for a separate driveway from the side road," Kevin explained, slipping into practical details. "You'd have privacy, but we could put in a connecting pathway between the properties." Martha was momentarily speechless, her architect's mind already racing with possibilities for the site. A small, efficient home oriented to capture both morning light and views of Mount Hood, perhaps with a studio where she could continue occasional consulting work. "This is unexpected," she finally managed. "Too much?" Elaine asked, suddenly uncertain. "We don't want to presume—" "No," Martha interrupted. "It's not too much, it's—" She felt emotion welling up unexpectedly. "It's perfect, actually. But are you sure? This is your land. Your fresh start. Family isn't about separation," Kevin said, echoing Martha's own words from months earlier. "It's about finding the right balance of togetherness and independence." Elaine nodded in agreement. "The baby should grow up with their grandmother nearby. Not in the same house, maybe, but close enough for bedtime stories and Sunday dinners." Martha looked between them, seeing how far they'd all come from that painful conversation nearly a year ago, when Elaine had told her to stay in her corner. Now they were offering her not a corner, but a place of her own, connected but distinct. "I'd need to draw up plans," Martha said, her mind already sketching possibilities. "Something modest, sustainable, nothing that would overshadow your home." "We trust your judgment," Kevin said. "After all, you're the architect." That evening, as Martha sat at her drafting table in her current home, she found herself sketching not one house, but two, Kevin and Elaine's nearly completed home on one side of the paper, and a new, smaller structure nestled among trees on the adjoining property. Between them, she drew a gently curving path connecting the two houses with a small seating area midway where the properties met. Not separate corners, but interconnected spaces. Not imposed proximity, but chosen closeness. Her phone chimed with a text from Elaine. "Felt the baby kick today. Strong and determined, just like their grandmother." Martha smiled, adding one final touch to her sketch, a small playground visible from both houses, positioned precisely where the connecting path joined the two properties. A shared space, belonging to neither house exclusively, but linking them together. As she put down her pencil, Martha realized she was designing something more significant than buildings. She was drafting the architecture of their future family relationship with clear boundaries, private spaces, and intentional connections. The blueprint had changed completely from her original vision, but the foundation was stronger for it. The November morning dawned clear and crisp, rare sunshine breaking through the typical Portland fall clouds. Martha stood in the driveway of Kevin and Elaine's completed home, directing the furniture delivery team as they carried the last pieces inside. After months of construction, inspections, and finishing touches, move-in day had finally arrived, just 2 weeks before Elaine's due date. The sectional goes in the living room, through the double doors, and positioned facing the windows. Martha instructed the delivery men, consulting her tablet where she'd organized the day's logistics down to the minute. Inside, the house hummed with activity. Kevin was in the kitchen unpacking dishes with his friend Mark, while Elaine's mother, Carmen, arranged books in the built-in shelves of the reading alcove. Elaine herself had been relegated to the oversized armchair in the living room, her feet propped up on an ottoman as she supervised via verbal directions rather than physical assistance. "Martha, could you check if they brought the right number of dining chairs?" Elaine called as Martha entered. "The invoice said 8, but I'm sure we ordered 10. At nearly 9 months pregnant, Elaine had maintained her characteristic attention to detail, though her usual energy had been replaced by a more measured pace. The pregnancy hadn't been easy. Her endometriosis had caused complications, requiring bed rest during the second trimester. But now, with the baby healthy and arrival imminent, the focus had shifted to creating a functional, comfortable home. "I'll verify the chair count," Martha assured her, pausing to adjust a throw pillow that had been haphazardly tossed on the sofa. "How are you feeling today?" Elaine rested her hands on her rounded belly. "Like I'm carrying a future soccer player. She hasn't stopped moving all morning." The she had been confirmed during an ultrasound 3 months earlier, prompting a nursery redesign from gender-neutral greens to a palette of soft lavender and cream, with constellation patterns on the ceiling that Martha had painstakingly painted herself as a gift to her future granddaughter. "She's excited about her new home," Martha suggested with a smile. "Smart girl already." The sound of hammering drew Martha's attention to the back of the house, where Marco, who had insisted on overseeing the final details personally, was installing the custom-built window seat in the breakfast nook, another element that had evolved from the original plans to incorporate both functionality and sentiment. "Perfect timing," Martha commented, inspecting his work. "The dining table arrives in an hour." Marco secured the last bracket before standing to admire the completed seat. "Not bad for a last-minute addition." The cushions arrived, being delivered this afternoon, with the nursery rocking chair. Martha checked items off her list, satisfaction warming her at each completed task. "You've done remarkable work, Marco. This house is everything they hoped for, with a few extra touches they didn't know they needed," Marco replied with a knowing look. "Your influence is all over this place, you know. Not just in the architecture, but in how it all came together." Martha considered this as she walked through the house, noting how the spaces flowed naturally from public to private, how the light changed throughout the day exactly as she'd envisioned, how each room felt both distinctive and part of a cohesive whole. Yet the final result was undeniably Kevin and Elaine's home, modern but comfortable, stylish but practical, with personal touches that reflected their merged tastes and histories. In the now complete basement apartment, Carmen was arranging fresh flowers on the small dining table. The space had evolved into a fully functional guest suite with a kitchenette, bedroom, bathroom, and sitting area. Currently, Carmen's temporary home, as she prepared to help with the new baby, but designed with flexible use in mind. "It's lovely down here," Carmen commented as Martha entered. "So thoughtful to include these separate outdoor access doors. I can come and go without disturbing anyone." "That was Elaine's idea," Martha acknowledged, though she'd been the one to suggest the additional soundproofing in the ceiling, a detail she suspected would be appreciated during middle-of-the-night newborn crying sessions. "My daughter has always valued independence," Carmen said with a knowing smile. Even as a child, she wanted her own space, her own way of doing things. She arranged the last flower in the vase. It means a lot that she wanted me here for the baby's arrival, and that she's embraced having you nearby as well. Martha nodded, understanding the significance. We've all found our rhythm. It took some adjustments, but we got there. Speaking of which, Carmen said, how is your house coming along? Elaine mentioned the foundation work is complete. Framing starts next week, Martha confirmed, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. After months of planning and permitting, construction had finally begun on Martha's own home on the subdivided corner of the property. The small but thoughtfully designed house would be her fresh start, close enough to be present in her granddaughter's daily life, but with sufficient separation to respect Kevin and Elaine's family boundaries. The connecting pathway between the properties had already been roughed in, with landscape lighting that would make evening visits safe and convenient. Martha had designed her primary bedroom window to face toward Kevin and Elaine's house, a subtle architectural choice that would allow her to see her granddaughter's bedroom light in the distance, a connection through the darkness. Upstairs, Martha found Kevin organizing his office, the enhanced wiring now supporting a professional setup for his expanded remote teaching responsibilities. The internet technician confirmed our connection is active, he reported, testing the monitors on his desk. Upload speeds are even better than expected. Excellent, Martha replied, making another check on her list. The security system should be fully operational by tonight. Kevin paused in his unpacking. You know, when Elaine first got pregnant, I panicked about everything not being ready. Now looking around at what we've accomplished, he gestured to the beautifully finished spaces around them. It feels like home already. That's the true measure of successful architecture, Martha said. When a house feels like home before the memories have even been made in it. A call from downstairs interrupted their conversation, Elaine's voice with an unusual edge of urgency. Martha and Kevin exchanged concerned glances before hurrying down to find Elaine standing awkwardly in the living room, one hand braced against the wall. My water just broke, she announced, her expression a mixture of surprise and alarm. But you're not due for 2 more weeks, Kevin said, momentarily frozen. Apparently your daughter has her own timeline, Elaine replied, wincing as a contraction began. Like father, like daughter, neither of you can follow a schedule. The calm efficiency that had characterized the move-in day transformed instantly into focused urgency. Carmen retrieved the hospital bag that had been packed and ready for weeks. Kevin called the obstetrician while helping Elaine to the car. Martha quickly reorganized the day's delivery schedule, sending brief, clear instructions to vendors about where to leave items in their absence. You don't have to come to the hospital right away, Elaine told Martha as Kevin helped her into the passenger seat. Someone should stay here to manage the deliveries. Martha nodded, understanding her role. I'll take care of everything here and join you later. Focus on bringing that little girl into the world. As their car pulled away, Martha turned back to the house, so nearly perfect, just missing its newest family member. She sent a quick text to Marco explaining the situation, then methodically continued coordinating the remaining deliveries, placing furniture exactly according to the planned layout, and organizing the kitchen essentials that would be needed upon their return from the hospital. In the nursery, Martha made a final inspection of the crib assembly, testing the sturdiness of each connection. The room was ready, clothing washed and organized in the dresser, changing table stocked with supplies, blackout curtains installed for daytime naps. On the wall hung a framed blueprint of the house, Martha's original drawing rendered in soft lavender ink, with a small gold star marking the nursery, a reminder of how the space had been designed with love long before its occupant existed. Hours passed as Martha transformed the house from a collection of new possessions into a functioning home. She stocked the refrigerator with prepared meals, programmed the coffee maker for the morning, and placed fresh towels in all the bathrooms. When the last delivery truck departed, she stood in the quiet entryway, taking in the completed home in its moment of anticipation, like a deep breath before a new life begins. Her phone chimed with a message from Kevin. "She's here. 6 pounds, 8 ounces. Everyone doing well. Come meet your granddaughter." Tears sprang to Martha's eyes as she read the text, followed by a photo of a tiny, red-faced newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket. Without hesitation, she gathered her things and headed to the hospital, her heart full with the realization that the most important construction project of all had just been completed. At the hospital, Martha found Kevin in the hallway outside Elaine's room, his face showing exhaustion and wonder in equal measure. "She's perfect, Mom," he said, embracing Martha tightly. "Absolutely perfect." Inside, Elaine reclined against the hospital pillows, looking tired but radiant as she cradled the newborn. Carmen sat nearby, beaming with grandmother pride. "Come meet Sophia Grace," Elaine said softly as Martha approached. "Sophia, this is your other grandmother." Martha's throat tightened with emotion as Elaine carefully transferred the tiny bundle into her arms. Looking down at her granddaughter's face, the delicate eyelashes, the perfect miniature fingers, the soft rise and fall of her chest with each breath, Martha felt a connection that transcended all the boundaries and compromises of the past year. "Hello, Sophia," she whispered. "I've been waiting for you." Later that evening, as Elaine and the baby rested, Martha sat with Kevin in the hospital cafeteria. "The house is ready whenever you're cleared to bring them home," she assured him. "Everything delivered, arranged, stocked." Kevin shook his head in amazement. "I don't know how you managed it all." "That's what architects do," Martha replied with a smile. "We create spaces for life to unfold in." "It's more than that," Kevin said, his expression serious. "This whole journey, from that first difficult conversation with Elaine to today, you've been building something more important than the house. You helped us create a family framework that works for everyone." Martha considered his words. "I suppose I've learned that good design isn't about imposing a vision. It's about creating a structure that supports what matters most to the people who will live within it." 3 days later, Martha stood on the front porch of the completed home, watching as Kevin's car pulled into the driveway. The moment felt ceremonial, the first time the house would fulfill its true purpose as a family home. Kevin carefully helped Elaine from the car, while Carmen gently lifted the baby carrier from the back seat. Martha had placed a small welcome wreath on the front door, adorned with lavender ribbons and a single silver key tied among the greens. "Welcome home," Martha said simply as they approached. Inside, sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the spaces that had been so carefully created over the past year. Elaine paused in the entryway, taking it all in, the home they had planned, argued over, redesigned, and finally created together. "It's perfect," she said, meeting Martha's eyes with genuine warmth. "Thank you for helping us build it in every sense." That evening, after Elaine and the baby were settled in the main bedroom for their first night home, Martha prepared to leave. Her own house was still months from completion, the foundation barely set, but standing in the driveway between the finished home and her future one, she felt a profound sense of rightness. Kevin joined her outside, looking up at the house now glowing with warm light from within. "Will you be okay going back to your old place tonight? You're welcome to stay in the basement apartment." Martha shook her head. "Carmen needs that space, and you three need time to settle in as a family. I'll be back tomorrow to help." "Not too early," Kevin cautioned with a smile. "We'll text when we're up." As Martha turned to leave, he added, "You know, when Elaine first told you to stay in your corner, I don't think any of us imagined we'd end up here. With you designing your own home next door, and Sophia having both her grandmothers in her daily life." Martha looked toward the corner of the property where her own house would soon take shape. "Sometimes the best designs emerge from the most challenging constraints." "Mom," Kevin said, his voice sincere, "you've never stayed in any corner your whole life. You've always created your own spaces. I'm glad Sophia will grow up seeing that." Driving home in the gathering dusk, Martha reflected on the journey of the past year. What had begun as a gift, a house designed as she thought it should be, had evolved into something far more valuable, A family structure built on mutual respect, clear boundaries, and intentional connections. The blueprint had changed completely, but the foundation was stronger for it. And in that redesigned space, 3 generations would now build their lives together, not confined to corners, but each with room to grow. As an architect, Martha had spent her career creating spaces for others. Now, for perhaps the first time, she had helped design a place where she truly belonged, not by imposing her vision, but by finding her rightful place within the larger structure of family. The house was complete. The home was just beginning.